She had one rule. Just one. Do not touch me in public. And for 6 months, she obeyed. She swallowed her pride at every gala. She watched other women drape themselves across him while she stood invisible in corners. She loved him in secret, in shadows, in silence. Until tonight. Tonight, she let another man's hands rest on her waist. Tonight, she let another man spin her across the dance floor. And tonight, the most feared vampire king in 5 centuries did something he swore he would never do. He snapped. Glass shattered. The temperature dropped. 300 vampires stopped breathing. And when Dante Ravencroft rose from his throne, every soul in that room knew someone was about to die. She had loved him in shadows for 6 months, never allowed to reach for his hand in daylight, never permitted to claim him before his court. But the moment Sienna let another man's arms encircle her waist on that dance floor, the most dangerous vampire king in 5 centuries shattered every rule he had ever made, and the entire kingdom would never be the same. Sienna stood at the edge of the grand terrace, her fingers gripping the cold marble balustrade as she watched the vampire elite glide through the moonlit gala like predators dressed in silk and diamonds. Her emerald gown clung to her frame, elegant and deliberate, chosen because 6 weeks ago Dante had whispered against her bare shoulder that green reminded him of the forests he'd loved as a human, lifetimes ago. But he would never say so publicly. He would never even glance in her direction here, surrounded by his court, his enemies, his carefully constructed empire of fear. She exhaled slowly, her breath forming small clouds in the October air. The scent of night-blooming jasmine mixed with expensive perfume and the underlying metallic tang of blood that always lingered where vampires gathered. Music drifted from the grand hall, a waltz performed by an orchestra that had probably been compelled into perfection. A server passed, human like her, eyes downcast. They didn't speak. The humans who served at vampire functions knew better than to form connections. Most wouldn't survive the season. But Sienna wasn't like them. She was here by choice. By love. By the foolish, devastating hope that one day Dante Ravencroft would claim her in the light as passionately as he did in darkness. Inside the great hall, Dante reclined on his obsidian throne like a king from ancient nightmares, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. His throne sat elevated above the crowd, a deliberate reminder of the hierarchy that governed their world. A crystal glass of blood wine balanced between his long fingers, the ring on his right hand catching the chandelier light. The Ravencroft family crest, worn by only one vampire in each generation. The one who survived all the others. His presence commanded the room without effort, without words. Dark hair fell just slightly over his brow in a way that looked careless, but Sienna knew he'd deliberately styled it that way. His eyes, cold and ancient as winter itself, tracked every movement in his domain with predatory precision. He saw everything. Knew everything. Controlled everything. Courtiers approached with rehearsed reverence, their fear masked behind practiced smiles, and he dismissed them with a single raised finger or a smile sharp enough to draw blood. A young vampire lord, barely a century old, dared step too close to the throne. His voice trembled as he spoke of territory disputes in the eastern province, of human rebellions and lost prophets. Dante tilted his head slowly, like a serpent considering its prey. When he spoke, his voice carried across the hall, velvet wrapped around a blade. You come to me, during my evening's entertainment, with problems you created through your own staggering incompetence, expecting me to clean up your mess like some sort of royal chambermaid. Tell me, Lord Garrett, do I look like I have nothing better to do than fix your disasters? The hall fell silent. Even the orchestra faltered for half a beat. Garrett stumbled backward, his face paling. Your Majesty, I only thought. You thought wrong, Dante continued, swirling his wine lazily, examining it as if it were more interesting than the vampire before him. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to your territory. You're going to handle this situation yourself with whatever limited intelligence you possess. And if I hear another word about Eastern Province problems, I'll assume you're incapable of leadership. And darling, we both know how I handle incapable leaders." His smile widened, showing just a hint of fawn. "I replace them. Permanently." Garrett fled so quickly he nearly knocked over a server. The court exhaled collectively. Someone laughed nervously. Dante raised his glass in a mock toast, and the party resumed as if nothing had happened. This was the man Sienna loved. Brutal when crossed. Feared by everyone who knew his name. Untouchable, unreachable, wrapped in power and violence and 5 centuries of survival. And completely unwilling to acknowledge her existence when others were watching. From her position on the terrace, Sienna felt the familiar ache settle in her chest. She'd known what she was agreeing to 6 months ago when this began. He'd been clear. Crystal clear. The memory surfaced unbidden. His chambers. Candlelight. His hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "If you stay, if we do this, you need to understand the rules," he'd said, his accent thickening with emotion. "I cannot claim you publicly. Not yet. The court would see it as weakness. My enemies would use you against me. Every vampire who wants my throne, and there are many, would see you as a target." "I'm not afraid," she'd whispered. "You should be. I've ruled for 300 years because I show no vulnerability. No attachment. The moment they know I care about something, that something becomes a weapon pointed at my heart. Then we'll be careful." He'd kissed her forehead, the gesture so tender it contrasted violently with the monster the world knew. "In public, I cannot touch you. Cannot acknowledge you. You'll have to watch me with others and pretend it doesn't hurt. Can you do that?" She'd said yes. She believed love would be enough. She'd been wrong. Hold on, if you're still watching and your heart is already breaking for Sienna, do me one favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and join the fastest growing vampire love stories community on YouTube, because what's about to happen next is going to make you want to throw your phone. Dante Ravencroft is about to learn a lesson he'll never forget, and trust me, you need to see his face when it happens. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and be honest, are you Team Sienna should leave him or Team Dante better fix this fast? I stayed up all night writing this for you, so don't break my heart by ghosting me now. 6 months of this. 6 months of stolen moments in his private chambers where he whispered her name like a prayer. 6 months of watching him flirt with vampire nobility while she stood invisible in corners. 6 months of being his secret, his shame, his hidden weakness. Sienna was done hiding. The decision crystallized when she watched Lady Morgana, a vampire duchess from the Western Territories, place her hand on Dante's arm. Watched him smile at her, that charming, devastating smile he used like a weapon. Watched him lean close to whisper something that made Morgana laugh, her hand lingering far too long on his chest. Something inside Sienna snapped. She turned from the terrace and walked back into the grand hall, her head high, her heart hammering against her ribs. The crowd parted slightly as she moved through it. Humans always smelled different to vampires, sweeter, warmer, alive in a way the undead could never replicate. That's when she saw him. Victor Ashford stood near the orchestra, champagne in hand, watching the dancers with the expression of someone profoundly bored. He was handsome in that polished, classical way, blonde hair swept back, strong jawline, expensive suit tailored perfectly. A visiting vampire from the Northern Territories, important enough to be invited but not significant enough to be feared. Perfect. Sienna walked directly to him, her courage fueled by 6 months of swallowed pride. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she said. Victor turned, his eyebrows rising slightly as he took her in. "Is it that obvious?" "Completely. I'm Sienna. Victor Ashford." He took her offered hand, his skin cool against hers, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Old-fashioned. Courtly. And you are absolutely the most interesting thing in this room. I doubt that. There are at least 50 vampires here who could kill us both without breaking a sweat. He laughed, genuine and warm. True. But none of them are wearing that dress quite as well as you are. From across the room, Sienna felt it. The prickle at the back of her neck. The sensation of being watched by something ancient and dangerous. She didn't look. Not yet. Dance with me, she said to Victor. His smile widened. I thought you'd never ask. When Victor's hand settled on her waist and he pulled her onto the dance floor, Sienna finally allowed herself to glance toward the throne. Dante was staring directly at her. Their eyes met across the sea of dancing couples, and even from this distance, she saw his expression shift. Saw the casual mask slip for just a fraction of a second, revealing something raw and furious underneath. His fingers tightened around his crystal glass. Victor led her into the waltz, his hand warm and steady at the small of her back. You're tense, he murmured near her ear. Am I? Like you're waiting for something to happen. Maybe I am. They turned, and she caught another glimpse of Dante. He hadn't moved. Hadn't blinked. His entire focus had narrowed to a single point, the man whose hands were on her body. The crystal glass in Dante's hand began to crack. Lady Morgana was speaking to him, her lips moving, but he didn't respond. Didn't even acknowledge her existence. You're a wonderful dancer, Victor said, spinning her gracefully. Thank you. You're not bad yourself. I had a very strict instructor. She used to hit my ankles with a cane when The glass exploded. The sound cut through the music like a gunshot. Crystal shards erupted in every direction, glittering in the chandelier light like violent stars. Blood wine splattered across the throne, the steps, the marble floor, dripping from Dante's palm in dark rivulets. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Every conversation died instantly. 300 vampires froze in place, their survival instincts screaming danger. Sienna's heart stopped beating for 3 full seconds. Dante rose from his throne slowly, deliberately, like a king rising to pass judgment. The movement was liquid and terrifying. His hand, still dripping wine and blood from where the crystal had cut him, hung loosely at his side. He didn't seem to notice the injury. Didn't seem to notice anything except the man holding Sienna. The temperature in the hall plummeted so quickly that frost began crawling across the windows in delicate, deadly patterns. Sienna had seen Dante angry before. Had heard the stories of his legendary rage. But she had never seen this. This was something primal. Something that predated civilization. He descended the throne steps without hurrying, each footfall echoing in the silence like a death knell. Vampires pressed themselves against walls, giving him a wide path. No one breathed. No one moved. His eyes had gone completely crimson, the beautiful brown she loved consumed by predatory fury. He crossed the dance floor, and Sienna felt Victor's hand begin to tremble against her waist. When Dante reached them, he stopped precisely 3 feet away. Close enough to attack. Far enough to savor the fear. His voice, when it came, was soft. Gentle, even. Which made it infinitely more terrifying. Victor Ashford. Dante tilted his head, a smile playing at his lips that held no warmth whatsoever. We haven't been properly introduced. I'm Dante Ravencroft. King of the Eastern Territories. Destroyer of the Blackwood clan. Executioner of the 12 traitors. And the man whose woman you're currently touching. Victor released Sienna so quickly she stumbled. Your Majesty, I sincerely apologize. I had absolutely no idea she was yours. No one told me. She wasn't marked. I would never." The words tumbled out in a panicked rush. Dante held up one finger. Victor's mouth snapped shut. "Here's my dilemma," Dante continued in that same terrifyingly casual tone, beginning to circle Victor like a shark. "You've touched something that belongs to me. Now, I'm a reasonable man. Truly, I am. Ask anyone here. Well, anyone who's survived knowing me." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Dante's smile sharpened. "So I'm trying to decide which part of you I should remove first. The hand that touched her waist? The arm that held her close? Or perhaps the eyes that dared to look at her like she was available?" "Dante, stop." Sienna's voice cut through his monologue. He turned to her, and for a heartbeat, she saw past the rage to the hurt underneath. The betrayal. The fear of loss that he'd never admit to feeling. "This doesn't concern you right now, love," he said softly. "Like hell it doesn't. We were dancing. That's all." He didn't know. Didn't know? Dante laughed, the sound sharp and beautiful and completely unhinged. "Or didn't care to ask? Tell me, Victor, when you saw this exquisite creature standing alone at my gala, in my home, did you think perhaps there was a reason no other vampire had approached her?" Victor said nothing, his face ashen. Dante stepped closer to him, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. "Did you think she was unclaimed? Unprotected? Just wandering about freely for your entertainment? I thought she was human," Victor managed. "Just a human at the party. Just a human," Dante repeated slowly. He turned to Sienna, his expression unreadable. "Do you hear that, darling? Just a human." Then he moved. One moment Dante stood 5 feet from Victor. The next, his hand was wrapped around Victor's throat, lifting the younger vampire off the ground entirely. Victor's feet dangled in the air as he clawed uselessly at Dante's wrist. "Let me educate you," Dante said conversationally, as if he weren't currently choking the life from someone. "This human has a name. Sienna. And she is under my protection, which means she is more valuable than every vampire in this room combined. Which means touching her without permission carries a penalty worse than death. Dante, put him down." Sienna grabbed Dante's arm, and electricity seemed to spark where her skin touched his. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. His hand opened. Victor collapsed to the floor, gasping, and immediately crawled backward. "Leave," Dante commanded. "Leave my territory. Tonight. If you're still within my borders by sunrise, I'll consider it a declaration of war against your entire clan." Victor fled, scrambling on hands and knees before finding his feet and running for the exit. The hall remained frozen in terrified silence. Dante's gaze swept across his court, across the 300 witnesses to his loss of control. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Let me make something abundantly clear to all of you. This woman is mine. She has been mine. She will continue to be mine. And the next person who touches her, speaks to her, or looks at her longer than 3 seconds will learn exactly why my name makes elder vampires wake screaming." He turned back to Sienna, his expression softening just slightly. Then he did something that shocked every vampire present more than the violence. He extended his hand to her. In public. In front of everyone. "Dance with me," he said quietly. It wasn't a command. It was a question. A plea. Sienna stared at his extended hand, the same hand that had just crushed a vampire's throat without hesitation. The same hand that had held her so gently in the darkness of his chambers. the same hand he had forbidden her from taking in public for 6 agonizing months. The orchestra remained silent. No one moved. 300 pairs of eyes waited for her response. She should take it. Should smile and step into his arms and pretend this was everything she wanted. He was finally claiming her. Finally choosing her in front of everyone. But all she could feel was rage. Now, her voice came out harder than she intended. After 6 months of hiding me like some shameful secret, you want to dance now? Something flickered across Dante's face. Surprise. Then hurt. Then the familiar mask sliding back into place. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, he said through a smile that didn't reach his eyes. No. You made this public. Let's keep it that way. Sienna folded her arms across her chest. Tell me, Your Majesty, what changed? Was it seeing another man's hands on me? Did that finally make me worthy of acknowledgement? A murmur rippled through the crowd. No one spoke to Dante Ravencroft this way. No one. His jaw tightened. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? She laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. You just threatened to dismember a man for dancing with me. You froze the windows. You declared me yours in front of your entire court. But I'm the one making a scene? You were trying to provoke me. Of course I was trying to provoke you. It was the only way to get you to look at me. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she hated herself for showing that weakness here, in front of all these predators. Dante's expression shifted again, and for a moment she saw the man beneath the monster. The one who had memorized her favorite flower. Who had traced constellations across her back while she slept, whispering names in languages long dead. But that man had kept her hidden for half a year. Sienna, he said softly, taking a step toward her. She stepped back. Don't. The word hung between them like a blade. Around them, the vampire court watched with the hungry fascination of creatures who fed on pain. Lady Morgana's lips curled into a satisfied smirk. Others whispered behind their hands. This was better entertainment than any of them had expected. Dante noticed. His spine straightened, his chin lifted, and the vulnerability vanished like smoke. Everyone out. His voice resonated with ancient power. Now. This gala is finished. No one argued. No one hesitated. The hall emptied in under 2 minutes, vampires flowing toward the exits like shadows fleeing the sun. Servants followed quickly after, heads down, eager to escape whatever was about to unfold. When the massive doors finally closed, leaving them alone in the cavernous hall, the silence felt suffocating. Dante walked to one of the windows, staring out at the gardens below. The frost still clung to the glass, slowly beginning to melt. You have no idea what you've done, he said quietly. Sienna remained where she stood in the center of the dance floor. What I've done? I danced with someone. That's all. That's all. He turned to face her, and his expression was terrifying in its blankness. By tomorrow evening, word will have spread to every territory. Dante Ravencroft has a human lover. A weakness. A pressure point. Is that what I am to you? A pressure point? You're a target now. His voice rose, echoing off the marble walls. Don't you understand? Every enemy I've ever made, and I assure you the list is extensive, will know exactly how to hurt me. They'll know your face. Your name. They'll know that if they want to bring me to my knees, all they have to do is take you. Sienna felt her anger waver, but she held on to it desperately. It was easier than facing the fear his words awakened. Maybe I don't want to be protected like some fragile doll locked away in your tower. And maybe I don't want to attend your funeral." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, stopping just close enough that she could feel the cold emanating from his skin. "I have lived for 500 years. I have loved before. And I have buried every single person I ever cared about." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I cannot bury you, Sienna. I won't survive it." The confession stole the breath from her lungs. She wanted to touch him, wanted to cup his face and tell him she understood, that she would be careful, that they would figure this out together. But 6 months of hidden kisses and public invisibility still burned in her chest. "So your solution was to pretend I don't exist?" She shook her head. "To let other women drape themselves across you while I watch from the shadows? Do you have any idea what that felt like? I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You were protecting your image. Your reputation. The great Dante Ravencroft, heartless and untouchable. You couldn't bear for anyone to know you were capable of loving a human." His eyes flashed crimson for just a moment before fading back to brown. "That's not fair. None of this is fair." Sienna felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry. "Not here. I gave you everything, Dante. My heart. My trust. My willingness to hide like some dirty secret. And all I asked was that eventually, someday, you would be brave enough to choose me openly. I just did." "No." She took another step back. "You claimed me like property because you couldn't stand another man touching your things. That's not choosing me. That's possession." The word landed like a slap. Dante stood perfectly still, and for a moment Sienna thought she had finally gone too far. Thought the monster would emerge and she would see why everyone feared him so desperately. Instead, he did something that scared her more. He laughed. It was a hollow sound, empty and aching, nothing like his usual sharp wit. "Possession," he repeated. "Is that truly what you believe? What else am I supposed to think?" He turned away from her, walking toward his abandoned throne. His hand trailed along the armrest, fingers tracing patterns she couldn't see. "I have conquered kingdoms," he said quietly. "I have destroyed bloodlines that stretched back millennia. I have made pacts with creatures that would freeze your blood to look upon. But you, Sienna, terrify me more than all of them combined." She said nothing. Waited. "When I am with you, I am not the king. Not the monster. I am just a man who doesn't want to be alone anymore." He turned back to face her. "And men can be hurt. Men can lose things they love. I've spent 5 centuries building an empire specifically so nothing could touch me ever again. And then I showed up. And then you showed up." His smile was sad and beautiful and devastating. "And suddenly I had something to lose." Sienna felt her resolve crumbling, but she forced herself to remember Lady Morgana's hand on his chest. The way he had smiled at other women while she stood invisible. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "I can't be your secret anymore. After tonight, you won't be. And what about tomorrow?" She spread her hands helplessly. "What happens when the danger comes? Will you hide me away again? Lock me in a tower for my own protection?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I don't have all the answers. I never claimed to be wise, love. Powerful, yes. Devastatingly handsome, certainly. But wise." He shook his head. 5 centuries and I still don't understand how to love someone without destroying everything around them." The vulnerability in his voice cracked something inside her. But she couldn't give in. Not yet. He needed to understand what he had done to her. "I need time," she said. "To think. To figure out if I can trust you not to hide me again the moment things get dangerous." Pain flashed across his features, quickly suppressed. "How long?" "I don't know." The silence stretched between them, filled with everything they weren't saying. Finally, Dante nodded once. "I'll have someone escort you to your chambers. You'll be safe there. I'm not staying here tonight." His expression sharpened. "Sienna, after what happened, every vampire in the territory knows about you. It isn't safe. I have my own apartment. I survived fine before I met you. Before tonight, no one was looking for you. Then send your guards if you must. But I'm not staying in this castle." For a moment, she thought he would argue. Would command her to stay with that ancient power in his voice that made vampires tremble. Instead, he simply said, "As you wish." He turned away from her, shoulders tight, and she realized she had never seen him look so defeated. "Sienna." His voice stopped her at the door. She turned. "I never thought you were shameful," he said quietly. "I thought you were precious. Too precious for this world of monsters." His eyes met hers across the empty hall. "I was trying to keep you safe from my enemies. I never realized I should have been protecting you from myself." She left without responding, her heart in pieces on the marble floor behind her. "Tell me honestly, do you think Sienna is right to walk away? Or should she have listened to Dante's explanation? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm genuinely curious where you stand right now." 3 days passed in silence. Sienna threw herself into work at the small bookshop she managed, organizing shelves that didn't need organizing, helping customers who didn't need helping. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind quiet. It didn't work. Every time the door chimed, her heart leaped. Every shadow in the corner of her eye made her turn. She was waiting for him, even though she told herself she wasn't. Dante's guards stood outside her apartment building, rotating in shifts. She pretended not to notice them. Pretended the knowledge of their presence didn't bring her comfort. On the 4th night, everything changed. Sienna was closing the shop when she heard the screaming. Glass shattered somewhere down the street. Car alarms erupted in a symphony of chaos. And then the smell hit her, smoke and something older, darker. She ran to the window and saw them. 3 vampires she didn't recognize, moving through the street with predatory grace, setting fires to storefronts, dragging humans from their cars. One of them turned toward the bookshop. Their eyes met through the glass. The vampire smiled, revealing fangs stained with fresh blood. Sienna's blood turned to ice. She stumbled backward, reaching for her phone, but before she could dial, the front door exploded inward. "There she is," the vampire crooned, stepping through the wreckage. "The king's little pet. We've been looking for you." Sienna grabbed a letter opener from the counter, knowing it was useless, knowing she was going to die. The vampire laughed. "Oh, that's precious. She thinks she can fight back." He moved toward her, impossibly fast, and Sienna closed her eyes. The killing blow never came. Instead, she heard a sound like thunder. A crash. A scream that wasn't her own. When she opened her eyes, Dante Ravencroft stood in the center of her destroyed bookshop, the vampire's heart in his hand. He was dressed entirely in black, his coat billowing behind him like wings of shadow. His eyes blazed crimson, and his expression held nothing human. Nothing merciful. The heart in his hand crumbled to ash. "Hello, love," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Miss me?" Before she could respond, the two remaining vampires burst through the back entrance. Dante didn't even turn to look at them. "I'll be with you in a moment," he said casually, still looking at Sienna. "I'm having a conversation." One of them lunged. Dante moved like lightning. One moment he was facing Sienna. The next, he had the attacker pinned against the wall, arm twisted at an impossible angle. "That was rude," Dante observed, interrupting someone mid-sentence. "Didn't your sire teach you manners?" The vampire snarled. "The Valdres clan sends their regards, Ravencroft. Your kingdom is finished." The Valdres clan. Dante smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "I destroyed them 3 centuries ago. Are there still survivors running about? How delightfully persistent. We've rebuilt. We're stronger now. And we're going to take everything from you, starting with her." Dante's smile vanished. His hand closed around the vampire's throat. "You know what I find fascinating about revenge? The patience it requires. Your clan has waited 300 years for this moment. Impressive, truly." He leaned closer. "Unfortunately for you, I'm not feeling particularly patient tonight." The vampire burst into flames. Sienna watched in horror as he burned from the inside out, his screams echoing through the ruined shop before cutting off abruptly. Ash scattered across the floor. The final vampire tried to run. Dante was faster. He appeared in front of the fleeing attacker, blocking the exit with casual grace. "Leaving so soon? But we haven't even been properly introduced." "Please," the vampire begged. "Please, I was just following orders, I didn't want to." "Shoo." Dante pressed a finger to his lips. "I don't actually care." Another burst of flame. More ash. Then silence. Dante stood among the destruction, straightening his cuffs as if he had merely stepped out for tea. When he turned back to Sienna, his eyes had faded to their normal brown, and his expression had softened. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. Sienna realized she was shaking. The letter opener clattered from her trembling fingers. You killed them. They were going to kill you." "I failed to see the dilemma. The Valdres clan. They came for me because of you." Dante's jaw tightened. "Yes. This is what you were afraid of. What you warned me about." "Yes." Sienna looked around at her destroyed shop. The books she loved scattered and burning. The life she had built independent of him, reduced to rubble in minutes. "I can't go back to my apartment, can I? It would be unwise. The Valdres clearly have resources. More will come. So what now? I hide in your castle forever?" Dante approached her slowly, carefully, like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. "Now, you let me protect you. Properly. Not from the shadows, not with distant guards." He stopped just in front of her. "Let me keep you safe, Sienna. Please." The please broke something in her. In 500 years, she doubted Dante Ravencroft had said that word more than a handful of times. "This doesn't mean I've forgiven you," she whispered. "I know. I'm still angry. I know that too. And we need to talk. Really talk. About everything." His hand reached out, hovering near her cheek but not quite touching. "Waiting for permission." "Anything you want," he said softly. "Any conversation. Any truth. I'll give you all of it." Sienna leaned into his palm, feeling the cool press of his skin against her cheek. Despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the uncertainty, being near him still felt like coming home. "Take me somewhere safe," she said. Dante's arms wrapped around her, and the world dissolved into shadow. They materialized in a part of the castle Sienna had never seen before. The room was smaller than his usual grand chambers, intimate and warm. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with old paintings. Unlike the rest of the castle, which felt designed to intimidate, this space felt lived in. Loved. "Where are we?" Sienna asked. Dante released her gently, moving toward a cabinet where crystal decanters waited. "My private quarters. The real ones. Not the throne room spectacle I show the court." She looked around with new eyes. A worn leather chair sat near the fire, a book splayed open on its arm. Shelves held not trophies of conquest but small treasures, a child's wooden toy, dried flowers pressed behind glass, a woman's portrait painted in oils. Sienna approached the portrait. The woman was beautiful, dark-skinned with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She wore clothing from another century. Who was she? Dante was quiet for so long that Sienna thought he wouldn't answer. Her name was Adeline, he said finally, handing Sienna a glass of wine. She was human. Like you. The past tense hung heavy in the air. What happened to her? Dante settled into the leather chair, staring into the flames. The firelight carved shadows beneath his cheekbones, making him look ancient. Tired. I happened to her. He took a long drink. 312 years ago, I was younger. More arrogant, if you can imagine such a thing. I had just claimed the Eastern Territory, and I believed myself invincible. Untouchable. Sienna sat on the floor near his feet, looking up at him. Waiting. Adeline was a merchant's daughter. She wandered into my territory by accident, lost during a storm. I should have sent her away. Should have compelled her to forget she ever saw me. His lips curved into a sad smile. Instead, I fell in love with her. You kept her hidden, Sienna said quietly. Like you did with me. No. Dante shook his head. That was my mistake. I was proud. Foolish. I wanted everyone to know she was mine. I paraded her at court, showered her with gifts, made it abundantly clear that she held my heart in her hands. His grip tightened on the glass. The Valdres clan was powerful then. We had been at war for decades. When they couldn't defeat me on the battlefield, they found another way. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. They took her from the gardens. Left pieces of her for me to find over the course of 3 days. Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. I destroyed them, Dante continued, his tone flat and empty. Every single one. I burned their castles, slaughtered their bloodlines, salted the earth where their territory stood. It took me 50 years, but I made sure no Valdres would ever rise again. He laughed bitterly. Or so I thought. The vampires tonight. Survivors. Children of survivors. Apparently my genocide wasn't thorough enough. He finally looked at her, and his eyes held centuries of grief. Do you understand now, Sienna? Why I hate you? Why the thought of anyone knowing about you kept me awake during the day? Sienna reached up and took his hand. His fingers were cold, trembling slightly. You weren't protecting your reputation, she whispered. You were protecting me from becoming another Adeline. I cannot watch it happen again. His voice cracked on the words. I cannot hold pieces of you in my hands and know that my love was the weapon that killed you. I would not survive it. I would become something worse than the monster I already am. Tears slipped down Sienna's cheeks. All her anger, all her resentment, suddenly felt small compared to the weight of what he carried. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because speaking of her makes it real. Makes the failure real. He set down his glass and cupped her face in both hands. And because I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you would realize what loving me actually costs. You would leave. And you would be right too. Dante. I have made countless enemies in 5 centuries. I have never apologized for my brutality, never regretted the blood on my hands. But Adeline's death? He closed his eyes. That haunts me every single night. And the thought of your face joining hers in my nightmares is more than I can bear. Sienna rose onto her knees, bringing herself level with him. She pressed her forehead against his. I'm not her, she said softly. And you're not the same man you were 3 centuries ago. Am I not? I killed 3 vampires tonight without hesitation. I would kill 300 more if they threatened you. There's a difference between protecting someone and being reckless with their safety. She pulled back to look at him. You learned from what happened. You tried to keep me hidden because you couldn't bear to lose someone else. That's not arrogance anymore. That's trauma. Dante stared at her like she was speaking a language he had forgotten. You should hate me, he whispered. Probably. She almost smiled. But I don't. I understand now. I wish you had told me sooner, but I understand. What happens now? Sienna looked at the portrait of Adeline, at the woman who had loved this impossible man 3 centuries before her. Now we figure out how to do this differently. Together. No more hiding, but no more recklessness either. She met his eyes. Can you do that? For the first time since the gala, something like hope flickered in Dante's expression. For you, he said quietly, I would try to move the sun itself. The fire had burned low by the time Sienna realized hours had passed. They had moved from heavy confessions to something lighter, almost tentative. Dante had produced a second bottle of wine and settled on the floor beside her, his back against the chair, their shoulders almost touching. Wait, Sienna said, nearly choking on her drink. You actually challenged a werewolf alpha to a poetry contest? In my defense, I was extraordinarily drunk. And I won. Dante's eyes sparkled with mischief. Though I suspect he let me win because he was terrified I would set his pack on fire if I lost. Would you have? Absolutely. I'm a terrible loser. It's one of my many character flaws. Sienna laughed, the sound surprising her. After everything that had happened tonight, she hadn't expected to laugh. Dante watched her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Tender. Almost reverent. What? She asked. Nothing. I just... He looked away, suddenly fascinated by the fire. I haven't made anyone laugh in a very long time. I've made them scream, certainly. Cry, frequently. Beg for mercy, occasionally. But laughter? He shook his head. That's rather new. Maybe you should try being funny more often instead of terrifying. Where's the fun in that? He flashed a grin that was pure charm. Besides, terror is an excellent negotiation tactic. You should see how quickly treaties get signed when I walk into a room. I bet. They fell into comfortable silence. Sienna leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the strange coolness of his body. She should have been cold. Instead, she felt warm. Safe. Tell me something about you, Dante said quietly. Something true. Something you've never told anyone else. Sienna considered the question. I almost got married once. She felt him stiffen beside her. Did you? His name was Gregory. We were engaged for 2 years. He was safe. Predictable. My mother loved him. She traced patterns on the rug. I called it off 3 days before the wedding. Why? Because I realized I was marrying him to make other people happy. Not because I loved him. I liked him well enough, but I never once looked at him and felt like I couldn't breathe. She turned to meet Dante's eyes. Not the way I feel when I look at you. Something raw and vulnerable crossed his face. He lifted his hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch impossibly gentle. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Probably not. But here I am anyway. Stubborn woman. Arrogant vampire. His lips twitched. Guilty as charged. She settled back against his shoulder, and his arm came around her, pulling her closer. For a long moment, they simply existed together, watching the flames dance. My sister would have liked you, Dante said suddenly. Sienna looked up. You have a sister? Had. Catalina. She was turned the same night I was. We spent our first century together, learning to survive, building our power. His voice grew distant. She was the moral one. Always telling me when I went too far. Always pulling me back from the edge. What happened to her? The usual tragedy. She fell in love with someone unsuitable. A human man who couldn't accept what she was. He raised a mob, and they staked her while she slept. Dante's jaw tightened. I handled the situation accordingly. Sienna didn't ask what accordingly meant. She could imagine. Is that why you're so protective? Why family matters so much to you? Family is the only thing that matters. His arm tightened around her. Blood calls to blood. Loyalty above all else. It's the one value I've never compromised. Betray a Ravencroft and I will hunt you across generations. But stand with us? His voice softened. And I will burn down the world to keep you safe. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the sharp line of his cheekbone beneath her palm. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. You say that now. I mean it. Dante turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so unlike the monster he showed the world, that Sienna's heart clenched. Come, he said, rising and pulling her gently to her feet. You need rest. Tomorrow we plan our response to the Valdris attack. Tonight, you sleep. Where? He gestured to a door she hadn't noticed. My chambers. You'll be safe there. I'll take the chair. The chair? You're a king. I've slept in far worse places, love. Coffins. Crypts. Once spent 3 decades trapped in a collapsed tomb because my brother thought it would be amusing. He smiled darkly. I repaid that particular debt with interest. You're terrifying, you know that. Absolutely. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But never to you. Now sleep. I'll be here when you wake. Sienna walked toward the bedroom door, then paused and looked back at him. Dante? Yes. Thank you. For saving me tonight. For telling me about Adeline. For all of it. His expression softened in a way that made him look almost human. Always, he said simply. She closed the door between them, and for the first time in days, Sienna fell asleep feeling truly safe. But safety, as she would soon learn, was a fragile illusion. Dante has lost everyone he has ever loved, his sister, Adeline, and now Sienna is in danger too. Do you think love is worth the risk of that kind of loss? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Sienna woke to the sound of shouting. She bolted upright, disoriented, the unfamiliar room slowly coming into focus. Dawn light filtered through heavy curtains. She had slept longer than intended. The voices came from beyond the bedroom door. Dante's, sharp with fury. And another, deeper voice she didn't recognize. She threw on the robe draped across the chair and opened the door. Dante stood in the center of the room, facing a massive vampire who towered over him by nearly a foot. Despite the size difference, there was no question who held the power. Dante's posture radiated menace, every line of his body coiled for violence. "You overstep, Constantine," Dante said, his voice dangerously quiet. The larger vampire, Constantine, held his ground. His face was scarred, his eyes cold. "I speak only what the council is too afraid to say. Your judgment is compromised. This human has made you weak. Choose your next words very carefully. The Vultures attacked openly because they sense vulnerability. 3 centuries of peace, destroyed because you couldn't control your appetites." Constantine's lip curled. "Your father would be ashamed." Dante moved so fast Sienna didn't see it. One moment he stood 6 feet from Constantine. The next, he had the larger vampire slammed against the wall, hand around his throat. "Speak of my father again," Dante whispered, "and I'll send you to join him." "Dante." Sienna's voice cut through the tension. Both vampires turned. Constantine's eyes landed on her with undisguised contempt. "So this is her. The human whore who's brought our kingdom to its knees." Dante's hand tightened. Bones cracked. Constantine gasped. "Apologize to her," Dante commanded. "I will not apologize for speaking truth. Then I'll remove your tongue and you'll apologize in writing." "Dante, stop." Sienna stepped forward. "Let him go." For a terrible moment, she thought he wouldn't listen. The crimson had bled into his eyes again, and his fangs had extended. This was the monster she had heard stories about. The one who had destroyed entire bloodlines. Then, slowly, his fingers uncurled. Constantine dropped to the floor, clutching his throat. "Get out," Dante said. "Tell the council I will address their concerns when I see fit. And if anyone else wishes to discuss my personal affairs, they can schedule an appointment with my executioner." Constantine fled, shooting Sienna a look of pure hatred as he passed. When they were alone, Dante stood with his back to her, shoulders heaving. "Who was that?" Sienna asked. "Constantine Valerius. My military commander. And apparently, the voice of my dissenting council." Dante laughed bitterly. "It seems not everyone approves of my choice in companion. They want you to get rid of me." It wasn't a question. Dante finally turned. His eyes had faded back to brown, but exhaustion lined his features. "The council believes you're a liability. They've proposed several solutions, none of which I find acceptable." "What kind of solutions?" He hesitated. "Dante. What kind of solutions?" Execution was mentioned. Exile was discussed. And there was one particularly creative suggestion involving memory erasure and relocation to another continent. His jaw tightened. "I rejected them all." Sienna felt the blood drain from her face. "Your own council wants me dead. They want me focused. They want me ruthless. They want the king they had before you complicated things." He moved toward her. "I told them to go to hell." "And how did they respond to that?" Silence. "Dante. They've given me an ultimatum." His voice was flat. "Renounce you publicly within 3 days, or face a vote of no confidence." If the vote passes, I lose the throne. Everything I've built for 5 centuries, gone. The words hit Sienna like a physical blow. Your kingdom, she whispered. They're making you choose between your kingdom and me. It's not a choice. I already made my decision. Dante, you can't give up everything for me. Your throne, your power, everything you've worked for means nothing. He cupped her face in his hands. Don't you understand? Kingdoms can be rebuilt. Power can be reclaimed. But you are irreplaceable. She should have been moved. Should have felt swept away by the romance of it all. Instead, she felt sick. And what happens when you resent me? She asked quietly. A year from now? 10 years? When you look at me and see everything you sacrificed? That won't happen. You don't know that. I know myself. Do you? Sienna pulled back from his touch. 3 days ago, you couldn't even hold my hand in public. Now you're ready to burn your kingdom to the ground? That's not love, Dante. That's obsession. He flinched as if she had struck him. You think I don't know the difference? I think you've spent 5 centuries controlling everything around you, and you can't stand that this situation is out of your control. The words poured out before she could stop them. I think you'd rather destroy everything than admit you might be wrong. Wrong about what? About loving you? About what love actually means. Sienna's voice rose. Love isn't possession. It isn't burning everything down so no one else can have what you want. It's compromise. It's sacrifice. It's letting go and holding on causes more harm. So you want me to let you go? Dante's expression hardened. You want me to renounce you? Throw you to the wolves so I can keep my precious throne? I want you to stop making decisions for both of us. She was shouting now, tears streaming down her face. You hid me for 6 months without asking. You claimed me publicly without asking. And now you're ready to abdicate without asking. When do I get a say in my own life? I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to control me. There's a difference. The words echoed in the sudden silence. Dante stood frozen, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely wounded. Not angry. Not defensive. Just broken. Is that truly what you think of me? He asked quietly. That I'm some tyrant playing games with your life? Sienna wanted to take it back. Wanted to cross the room and hold him and pretend she hadn't just shattered something fragile between them. But she couldn't. Because part of her meant it. I think you love me the only way you know how, she said, her voice cracking. And I think it's going to destroy us both. Dante nodded slowly, something in his eyes going cold. Distant. Then perhaps Constantine was right, he said flatly. Perhaps I am compromised. Perhaps you would be safer far from here. Far from me. Dante, that's not what The helicopter will be ready within the hour. I'll have you taken somewhere safe. Somewhere my enemies can't find you. Somewhere I can't hurt you anymore. Stop. Just stop and listen to me. I believe you've said enough. His voice was ice. You want a say in your life? Here it is. You're free. Free of me, free of my kingdom, free of every monster who would use you as a weapon against me. He turned away from her. Dante, please. Leave, Sienna. His voice broke on her name, just slightly. Before I change my mind and prove you right about everything. She stood there, tears falling freely, waiting for him to turn around. waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. And so she walked out, leaving her heart bleeding on the floor behind her. The helicopter never came. Sienna sat in a guest chamber on the opposite side of the castle, bags packed, heart hollow, waiting for an escort that didn't arrive. Hours passed. The sun set and rose again. Servants brought food she couldn't eat. Guards stood outside her door, but no one came to take her away. On the second day, she finally asked a maid what was happening. The woman's face paled. "You haven't heard?" "Heard what?" "The king has locked himself in the throne room. He won't see anyone. Won't feed. The council is in chaos." The maid wrung her hands. "They say he's destroying everything. Furniture. Paintings." They can hear the screaming from 3 floors away. Sienna's blood went cold. She pushed past the maid and ran. The closer she got to the throne room, the worse the destruction became. Shattered vases littered the hallways. Claw marks scored the walls. Servants huddled in corners, too afraid to flee, too afraid to stay. She found Constantine outside the throne room doors, his face grim. "Let me in," Sienna demanded. "Absolutely not. He's been like this for 2 days. He nearly killed 3 guards who tried to enter. I don't care. Open the doors." Constantine laughed without humor. "You caused this, human. Your rejection broke something in him. Something that may never heal." The words pierced her chest, but she refused to flinch. "I didn't reject him. He sent me away. Because you told him his love was obsession. Because you made him believe he was incapable of loving you properly." Constantine's eyes narrowed. "I wanted you gone because you made him weak. Now I see you've made him something far worse. You've made him hollow." Sienna stared at the massive doors, hearing something crash behind them. A roar of anguish that didn't sound human. "This is my fault," she whispered. "Yes." "Then let me fix it." Constantine studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her expression made him step aside. "If he kills you, I'll deny I ever allowed this." Sienna didn't respond. She pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The throne room was unrecognizable. Every piece of furniture had been reduced to splinters. The massive chandeliers lay shattered on the marble floor, crystals scattered like frozen tears. The tapestries that had hung for centuries were torn to ribbons. And in the center of it all, surrounded by destruction, sat Dante. He was on the floor, his back against his ruined throne, knees drawn to his chest. His clothes were torn and stained with blood, though whether it was his own or someone else's, she couldn't tell. His hands were shredded, healing slowly, evidence that he had caused this damage with his bare fingers. He didn't look up when she entered. "I told you to leave," he said, his voice raw and empty. Sienna picked her way through the debris, glass crunching under her shoes. "You told me a lot of things. I've decided to stop listening." Sienna. Her name was a warning. "I'm not safe right now." "You've never been safe. That's not why I love you." She reached him and lowered herself to the floor, sitting beside him amidst the ruins of his kingdom. Their shoulders touched. He flinched but didn't pull away. For a long moment, neither spoke. "I said terrible things," Sienna whispered finally. "I was scared and overwhelmed and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. You said true things." Dante's voice was hollow. "I am controlling. I do make decisions without consulting you. I've spent 5 centuries as a tyrant, and I don't know how to be anything else." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He finally looked at her, and the devastation in his eyes stole her breath. I've been sitting here for 2 days, trying to remember how to exist without you. Trying to imagine a future where I let you go and somehow survive it. He laughed brokenly. I can't. I've fought wars. I've survived torture. I've endured things that would shatter lesser creatures. But losing you? That I cannot bear. Sienna reached for his hand, wrapping her fingers around his bloodied knuckles. Then don't. You deserve better than a monster who loves too fiercely. And you deserve better than a woman who runs when things get hard. She squeezed his hand. I got scared, Dante. Scared of how much I need you. Scared of what loving you might cost. So I pushed you away before you could leave me first. I would never leave you. I know that now. She lifted his hand to her lips and kissed his torn knuckles. I know because you destroyed your entire throne room rather than let me go. That's not a healthy response to emotional distress. Probably not. But it's very you. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Just a flicker. But it was there. The council still wants me to renounce you, he said quietly. The ultimatum stands. I know. If I refuse, I lose everything. No. Sienna turned to face him fully. If you refuse, you lose your throne. That's not everything. That's just a chair. A very expensive chair that took me 3 centuries to claim. So claim another one. You're Dante Ravencroft. You've built empires before. You can do it again. He stared at her with something like wonder. You would let me sacrifice my kingdom for you? I would let you make your own choice. That's what you deserve. Not me telling you what to do, not your council threatening you, but the freedom to decide what matters most. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I choose you, he said finally. I will always choose you. Even if it means losing everything else? Sienna. He cupped her face in his hands, and despite the blood and the destruction and the chaos around them, his touch was impossibly gentle. Don't you understand? You are everything else. The throne is nothing. The kingdom is nothing. Without you, I'm just a monster sitting in an empty room, waiting for the sun to finally burn me away. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what I said. For making you feel like your love wasn't enough. I'm sorry for hiding you. For making you feel like my shame instead of my treasure. He pressed his forehead to hers. I've made so many mistakes. We both have. Can we start over? Sienna smiled through her tears. No. We can't erase what happened. But we can move forward. Together. No more secrets. No more control. Just us, figuring it out as we go. That sounds terrifying. Most worthwhile things are. Dante kissed her then, gentle and desperate and full of 5 centuries of loneliness finally finding its end. She tasted blood and tears and something that might have been hope. When they finally pulled apart, he was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile that transformed the monster into a man. The council meets tomorrow, he said. They'll demand my decision. And what will you tell them? His smile sharpened into something dangerous. Something magnificent. I'll tell them exactly where they can put their ultimatum. And then I'll remind them why no one challenges Dante Ravencroft and lives to brag about it. Sienna laughed despite herself. You're going to terrify them, aren't you? Absolutely. It's what I do best. He rose, pulling her to her feet. But first, we need to make you officially untouchable. No more hiding. No more secrets. What did you have in mind? His eyes gleamed with mischief and malice in equal measure. How do you feel about becoming a queen? The council chamber fell silent when Dante Ravencroft entered. Not his usual entrance through the main doors, surrounded by guards and ceremony. No, he materialized from shadow itself, appearing on the dais like a demon summoned from ancient nightmares. His coat billowed behind him, black as midnight, embroidered with crimson thread that caught the candlelight like fresh blood. 12 council members sat frozen around the circular table. Constantine stood at attention near the wall, his expression unreadable. And in the gallery above, vampire nobility had gathered to witness the fall of their king. They expected a broken man. A lovesick fool ready to surrender his crown for a human woman. They received something else entirely. "Good evening," Dante said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "I understand you've been busy in my absence. Plotting. Scheming. Drafting ultimatums like children playing at politics." Lord Harrington, the eldest council member, cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, we simply—" I wasn't finished speaking. Dante smiled, and 3 council members visibly flinched. "You gave me 3 days to renounce the woman I love. To cast her aside like yesterday's garbage so you could feel secure in your positions. You questioned my judgment, my strength, my fitness to rule." He began walking slowly around the table, trailing his fingers along the backs of empty chairs. "Tell me, Lord Harrington, how many wars have you won?" Harrington swallowed. "Your Majesty, I'm not a military." "0. The answer is 0. Dante continued walking. "And you, Lady Vesper, how many centuries have you held this territory?" Lady Vesper, a severe woman with silver hair, lifted her chin. "I don't see what that has to." "Also 0. I, on the other hand, have ruled for 300 years. I've crushed 17 rebellions. I've executed 43 traitors. I've expanded our territory by 400%. He stopped at the head of the table. "And you think a human woman has made me weak?" No one responded. The Valdris clan attacked because they've been planning their revenge for 3 centuries. They would have moved eventually regardless of who shared my bed. Your intelligence network failed to detect them. Your border patrols let them through. Your security protocols allowed 3 assassins within striking distance of my castle. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Those are your failures. Not mine." Constantine stepped forward. "Your Majesty speaks truth. I've already begun investigating the security breaches." "Have you?" Dante's eyes slid to his commander. How comforting to know someone in this room is doing their job. He turned back to the council, his expression softening slightly into something almost amused. "Now, regarding your ultimatum. I have considered it carefully." He paused for effect. "I reject it entirely." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. "Furthermore, I have decided to take a bride." The murmurs became gasps. "A human bride." Dante smiled at their horror. "Sienna will become my queen. She will be afforded every protection, every privilege, every courtesy that position demands. And if anyone in this room, or in this kingdom, or in this world objects..." He leaned forward, planting both hands on the table. "I invite you to challenge me directly. Right here. Right now." His eyes blazed crimson. "I could use the exercise." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then the doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and Sienna walked in. She wore a gown of deepest emerald, the same green Dante loved, with a bodice embroidered in gold. Her hair was swept up, exposing her neck in a deliberate display of vulnerability that somehow read as power. She walked with her head high, meeting the eyes of every vampire who dared to look. Dante extended his hand to her, and unlike 6 months of hidden touches, unlike every secret moment stolen in darkness, this gesture was entirely public. She took his hand. The council watched as he drew her to his side, wrapping an arm around her waist in unmistakable possession. "May I present my future queen," Dante said, his voice warm with genuine affection. "The woman who has made me stronger, not weaker. The woman who challenges me when I'm wrong and stands beside me when I'm right. The woman who walked into a room full of predators and didn't flinch once." Sienna looked up at him, and her smile was radiant. "You forgot to mention the woman who puts up with your dramatic entrances," she said. Laughter rippled through the gallery. Shocked, startled laughter, like children who'd been told they were allowed to breathe again. Dante grinned, the expression transforming his entire face. "She also has a sharp tongue. I find it delightful." Lord Harrington rose slowly. "Your Majesty, the council, we would need to discuss." "There's nothing to discuss. This isn't a negotiation. It's an announcement." Dante's tone brooked no argument. "The wedding will take place in 1 month. You're all invited. Attendance is mandatory." Lady Vesper stood as well. "And the vote of no confidence?" Dante's smile turned predatory. "Feel free to proceed with it. I'll wait." No one moved. No one spoke. No one dared to call for a vote against a king who had just demonstrated exactly why he'd held power for 3 centuries. Finally, Constantine broke the silence. "The council withdraws its ultimatum," he announced, "and offers its congratulations to His Majesty and his future queen." One by one, the council members nodded their agreement. Some looked genuinely pleased. Others merely looked relieved to have survived. Dante turned to Sienna, his expression softening into something private, intimate, completely at odds with the public spectacle around them. "Well, love," he murmured. "Still think my love is obsession?" She reached up and straightened his collar, a familiar gesture that made several vampires raise their eyebrows. "I think your love is terrifying and overwhelming and completely unreasonable," she said. "That's not reassuring." "I wasn't finished." She rose on her toes and kissed him softly. "I also think it's the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." When she pulled back, Dante's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Careful," he whispered. "You'll make me look soft in front of my subjects." "You are soft. You just hide it behind the murders." He laughed, genuine and full, and the sound echoed through the chamber like music. Later that night, they stood together on the balcony of his private chambers, watching the stars emerge above the kingdom that was now officially theirs. 1 month, Sienna said. "That's not much time to plan a royal wedding. I have 17 servants whose sole job is party planning. They've been waiting centuries for something to do." "Still." She leaned against him. "It feels fast. We've wasted enough time hiding." Dante pulled her closer. "I don't want to waste another moment." She thought about the journey that had brought them here. The months of shadows. The gala that had changed everything. The violence and the vulnerability, the breaking and the rebuilding. "Do you think we'll be happy?" she asked quietly. Dante considered the question seriously. "I think happiness is a choice we'll have to make every day. Some days will be harder than others. We'll fight. We'll disagree. You'll probably threaten to leave me at least twice more." "Only twice?" I'm being optimistic. He turned her to face him. But every morning, I'll choose you. Every evening, I'll choose you. Every moment in between, I'll choose you. And eventually, all those choices will add up to a lifetime. 5 centuries is a long lifetime. Is that your way of asking if I'll turn you? She hadn't meant to bring it up so soon. But the question had been lingering since he first mentioned marriage. Eventually, she said carefully, "If you want to." "If I want to?" Dante cupped her face in his hands. "I want forever with you. But only when you're ready. Only when you've lived enough human life that you won't have regrets. And if I'm never ready, then I'll love you for whatever time we have. And when you're gone, I'll carry you with me until the sun finally claims me." His voice thickened. "Either way, you're my last love, Sienna. There won't be another after you." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she laughed through them. "You really need to stop saying things that make me cry." "Never." He kissed her forehead. "Your tears are proof that you feel as deeply as I do. I treasure every one of them. That's either romantic or deeply concerning. Both. Usually both with me." She laughed again, burying her face in his chest. His arms wrapped around her, strong and cool and safe. "I love you," she whispered against his heart. "I know." He pressed his lips to her hair. "And I love you. More than kingdoms. More than power. More than the blood that sustains me." They stayed like that as the moon rose higher, 2 souls who had found each other against impossible odds. A human woman and a vampire king. A love story written in shadows and starlight. And somewhere in the darkness, the Valdres survivors watched and plotted. The council members nursed their wounded pride. Enemies circled, waiting for weakness. But Dante Ravencroft had never been weaker. And he had never been stronger. Because love, he was learning, wasn't a vulnerability at all. It was the most powerful weapon he had ever wielded. And he would never let it go again. If you made it all the way to the end, you are officially part of the family now. Dante would approve. So do me one small favor, hit that subscribe button and join the fastest growing vampire love story community on YouTube. I poured my entire heart into this story, and your subscription tells me it was worth every sleepless night. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and let me know, did Dante win you over completely or were you Team Sienna the whole time? I read every single comment and I genuinely want to know your thoughts. Don't be a stranger. Don't ghost me after everything we've been through together. And remember, the next story is already coming. You won't want to miss what happens when old enemies return and new alliances are tested. Subscribe now so you never miss an upload. I'll see you in the next one, family.